Number 5. The Behemoth. You wanted 5 more creatures, and I wanted an excuse to keep reading this thing. This book is terrifying. Speaking of, did you know that there's a herbivore creature plated in spikes and armor with a tail the size of an oak tree, head like a lion, swallowing up rivers, just roaming around back then? Yeah, apparently. The Behemoth. This Goliath of a beast was one of the first talked about. Not the first beast, that's a completely different thing. Also terrifying. The Behemoth. God's secret weapon, and apparently the first thing he created. Hadn't made us in his image yet, so this hippo tank Elder Scrolls boss was what God went with. One of the most popular and revered creatures in the Bible. Quote, "Behold now Behemoth, which I made with thee. He eateth grass like an ox, he moveth his tail like a cedar, his bones are as strong as pieces of brass, his bones are like bars of iron." Yeah, this is definitely a dinosaur, right? Right? Scholars seem to think that the Behemoth is an aggressive exaggeration of a large hippopotamus or rhinoceros. Opening up its mouth and swallowing a river could literally mean it's just an animal thirsty. In 2003, French scientists working in Pakistan claimed to have discovered an extinct species of rhinoceros called a Balfagor, which was much larger, much scarier, and matched the physical description given in the Book of Job. Yeah, that's terrifying stuff. Number 4. 200 million horsemen. This next one is not really a creature as much as it's the end of a lot of all of us. All this Armageddon stuff they were saying, that's some pretty strange stuff that's on its way. Book of Revelation stuff, you know? Quote, "I saw as God wanted to show me the horses and the men on them. The men had pieces of iron on their chests. These were red like fire and blue like the sky and yellow like sulfur. The heads of the horses looked like the heads of lions. Fire and smoke and sulfur came out of their mouths. 1/3 part of all man was killed by the fire and smoke and sulfur that came out of their mouths." Word for word. Horsemen or ancient biblical technology? This sounds horrifying. Also, 200 million? That's a lot of flying flaming horses just trucking around the skies and sands like giant tanks, firing fire out of their mouths and nose. "As I looked, behold, a stormy wind came out of the north, and a great cloud with brightness around it, and fire flashing forth continually, and in the midst of the fire, as it were gleaming metal. And from the midst of all this came likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had a human likeness." Okay. You put a Baja hoodie on me at a Dave Matthews concert and hear me saying all that stuff, you probably just think I'm some sci-fi stoner. Nope. This is riveting material, folks. I need to read this thing front to back. Apparently this force was supposed to have taken out, or is going to take out, 1/3 of the entire world's population. I know like 3 things that can do that. Pandemics, missiles, and floods. However, if men and horses showed up with lion heads breathing fire, it's safe to say it's game over. Number 3, unicorns. Hold up. This is scarier than the devil, right? Unicorns? Really? Oh yeah. No, not the glittery ones with Farrah Fawcett hair like Hercules rides. More like a firstborn bull. Giant, with a huge spear on its head. He has majesty, and his horns are the horns of a wild ox. And with them he shall gore the peoples, all of them, to the ends of the earth. Okay, yeah, that's really aggressive. I guess unicorns were a little bit scarier in the Bible, huh? A couple times these things are brought up too. It seems like a lot of people were seeing these. Yeah, I'd say a hunk in a suit on a television series is much less scary than a monster horse goring you to death. A ram is mentioned 9 times in the Hebrew Bible. It's been translated to unicorn in the King James Version, and some translations as oryx, which was seen as a wild ox or rhinoceros. Quote, "And the unicorn shall come down with them, and the bullocks with the bulls, and their land shall be soaked with blood, and their dust made fat with fatness." Yeah, harsh. I mean, rhinos and other single-horned animals do this. The Bible describes unicorns skipping like calves, traveling like bulls, and bleeding when they die, so they were real and very mortal, mostly believed to be an exaggeration though. Even Julius Caesar speaks of them. Quote, "A little below the elephant in size and appearance, color, and shape of a bull, their strength and speed are extraordinary. They spare neither man nor wild beast." Were the ancients seeing like giant extinct rhinos, or were these flying evil narwhals just goring everyone to the end of the earth? Who knows? Sure sounds like it. Number 2, locusts. Dude, I'm already afraid of the 12-inch flying praying mantises that do exist today. I can't imagine what these things looked like. Imagine a dog-sized flying insect blocking out the sun because there's so many of them. Abaddon's locusts. These things were terrifying. The Bible has this to say about them. The fifth angel, apparently Abaddon, sounded his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen from the sky to the earth. The star was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. When he opened the abyss, smoke rose from it like the smoke from a gigantic furnace. The sun and sky were darkened by smoke from the abyss, and out of the smoke, locusts came down upon the earth and were given power like that of scorpions. These demon bugs are well detailed in the Bible. They're described as, quote, horse-like creatures preparing for battle, adorned with crowns of gold above their head. Their face is like a man, but woman's hair with lion's teeth. Their body was locust-like, covered with iron breastplates. They have scorpion-like stings on their tails and razor-sharp claws, and the sound of their army will be like 1,000,000 horses marching to the battlefield. Dude, that's a locust? Like a locust, the bug? No, I don't think so. They will be freed by their master Abaddon from the bottomless pit and will torment all of the remaining sinners on earth for 5 months. Abaddon is described as the king of the army of locusts. Yeah, guy's really into bugs. Yeah, that's like some Fear Factor stuff right there. Just like 1,000,000 bugs swarming you? No thanks. And coming in at number 1, the dragon. Okay, there's some speculation here that this thing is the devil himself. The devil and the dragon. But also this thing apparently lives with the devil. I don't know, people were saying mixed things, but important thing is, things weren't too literal back then, and they were really spiritual. People were just trying to explain what they were seeing and feeling the best way they could. But yes, there was dragons. Yeah, we have the skeleton bones. Okay? And before you're picturing something fun like Dudley the Dragon or the ones that talk in The Hobbit who sit atop gold, no. Picture when it sneezes, it flashes light. Its eyes are like the red of dawn. Lightning leaps from its mouth. Flames of fire flash out. Smoke streams from its nostrils like steam from a pot heated over burning rushes. Its breath would kindle coals, for flames shoot from its mouth. Yeah, this thing, terrifying. Tremendous strength of Leviathan's neck strikes terror wherever it goes. Its flesh is hard and firm and cannot be penetrated. Job 41:18-23. This great dragon, the ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, the one deceiving the whole world, was thrown down to the earth with all the angels. And I saw 3 evil spirits that looked like frogs leap from its mouth of the dragon, the beast and the false prophet. They are demonic spirits who work miracles and go out to the rulers of the world to gather them for battle against the Lord on that great judgment day of God the Almighty. He seized the dragon, that old serpent who is the devil, Satan, and bound him in chains for thousands years. The angel threw him into the bottomless pit, which he then shut and locked so Satan could not deceive the nations anymore until 1,000 years were finished. Okay, yeah, that sounds like one giant amazing cutscene from a God of War game. Just chucking a dragon into a pit? Also, it's 2022. We better lock that thing back up. It's been more than 1,000 years now, no? Quote, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads were 7 diadems. Okay, so it wears 7 crowns. Maybe this thing is the devil. It's mentioned numerous times in the Bible. I've seen Game of Thrones. This thing is scary. Yeah. Number 5, Nephilim. This one I can get behind for sure. How the pyramids were built still baffles me, and reading all about these things at least makes my brain relax for a second. The giants, the talls, the long neck people, the Nephilim. Again, never been a Bible guy myself, so no judgment if you say all this happened, but I'm just catching up on all this stuff. But in short, the Nephilim were like the offspring of angels and human women, according to Genesis 6:1-4 and Jude. The Nephilim are also mentioned in Numbers 13:33, but it is likely that by this time in Israel's history, Nephilim was used as a term for a tall, intimidating peoples. It's plausible that the Nephilim were both half angels and half giants, making them absolutely huge and absolutely super strong. The Nephilim were the children of the sons of gods and daughters of men, and Christian scholars have theorized that the sons of gods were actually these demonic fallen angels who reproduced with women. Being the offspring of partial angelic heredity, the Nephilim were considered mighty men who are of old the men of renown. The ancients. These people were huge, claiming that they were like 5 times the size of an average man. In the Hebrew Bible, a group of mysterious beings or people of unusually large size and length who lived both before and after the flood were called Nephilimus, sometimes translated to giants. Even the fallen ones from the Hebrew Nephil, meaning to fall. Seems like these people were writing about similar stuff, huh? Spooky.
Number 4. Balfagor. Now another demon who's had his moment in pop culture. Maybe you recognize Balfagor from Supernatural's first fledgling season, all the way back when the boys were wide-eyed and hadn't even died once yet. Or maybe if you're a Persona fan, you recognize Balfagor as the perpetually bored demon on the can. It's a video game with a talking cat. And you play as a guy who's got a healthy sleep schedule and can manage his social circle well. It's not a game focused on realism. But it turns out, doing a little research, there was a reason for this foul demon's appearance. One of the 7 princes of hell, the demonic icon of Sloth's favorite offering isn't blood or a fresh goat, but a little mud pie, feces if you want to get scientific with it. Look, I'm not going to judge, and I'm not going to ask what he's doing with it. Old lore just says that if you wanted to summon Balfagor, you had to bring him a lot of feces. There's no metric volume ever listed, just a lot. If you do summon him, he'll trade you wondrous riches, expand your ability to discover new things, expand your consciousness, but at the cost of the temptation of your mortal soul, and you'll also probably never be able to wash your hands clean again. I'm sorry, I don't usually work so blue. It's the lazy man's comedy, although perchance that's fitting for the demon prince of sloth. Balfagor has been depicted in all manner of ways over the years, appearing sometimes as esoteric things like tree branches, or sometimes taking the form of beautiful women. But one wood carving in the 18th century of him sitting on an 18th century John sealed his fate pretty much forever, and then since then, he's almost always been depicted as a horned demon sitting on a throne of sorts. Balfagor, I want to make something clear here. I'm not making fun of you. I'm trying to make sense of all this.
Number 3, the Leviathan. Okay, at first I was like, oh, that's a roller coaster at Canada's Wonderland. No, this vicious monster was actually modeled after this vicious monster. The Leviathan, the second of the great monsters described in the book of Job. This Leviathan is an absolute massive sea monster who's impervious to human weapons, breathes fire, and emits smoke from his nostrils. So this is a Zelda boss for sure. The Leviathan is probably related to another ancient monster called Lotan, a 7-headed giant serpent who represents primeval chaos, as with pretty much every other biblical creature does. Hey, these things aren't meant to be cute and fuzzy. There's some less exciting theories that insist the Leviathan is just a dramatic interpretation of a crocodile or anaconda or maybe a plesiosaur, resembling something like the Loch Ness Monster. But that doesn't explain the breathing fire thing, or the size. Was this giant sea snake a water dragon? Because apparently it's like 300 miles long. Yeah, terrifying. Scary thing now is many different religions and cultures have their own version of the Leviathan. Tiamat, Hydra, Jormungandr. Maybe this thing was just hunted into extinction. I don't know. What do you think? Number 2, Archangel Michael. It is said that the angels are not humans, but creatures made from God's creation. I've also seen what the Bible describes angels looking like, and it's not handsome people with wings. Apparently a lot of these things, people really couldn't even describe what they were seeing in front of them. But we'll get to what these things look like in a minute. Of those creatures, Satan, aka Lucifer, is one. The one. However, here is even one creature that Satan fears more than any creature, and that's fellow Archangel Michael. Or Saint Michael. Some say they're brothers, some say they were on the same team for a bit. This is some good stuff, people. Quote, "Now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him." Revelation 12:7-9. Okay, so hold on. He and them are all down here with us? That's terrifying. Apparently Michael led that army that won, so whatever scares Satan scares the hell out of me as well. Also, all these pictures and statues of him and like window panes are all of him like wielding a giant sword made of light, just stepping on Satan's back as a hero. That's pretty intimidating, not gonna lie. And coming in at the number 1 spot, Ophanim. Okay, so what angels actually looked like apparently was like giant geometrical feathers with eyes and a consciousness. Some had horns, some had hooves, lots of gold and metal colors. This next thing doesn't even make sense to my brain. I feel like this is an anthill trying to understand an iPhone. Quote, "As I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the ground beside each creature with its 4 faces. This was the appearance and structure of the wheels. They sparked like topaz, and all 4 looked alike. Each appeared to be made like a wheel, intersecting a wheel. As they moved, they would go in any one of the 4 directions the creatures were faced. The wheels did not change direction as the creatures went. Their rims were high and awesome, and all 4 rims were full of eyes all around. Ezekiel 1:15-18. First off, is this thing even a creature? Yeah, everything I see here is an alien. Is this just us trying to process some sort of like energy being with eyes? Because if I saw Lucifer that looks like the hunk on the Netflix show, and then I saw this thing, one of the Dead Sea Scrolls interprets them as angels. Late sections of the Book of Enoch interprets them as class of celestial beings who don't sleep and guard the throne of God. Whatever this thing or things are, it sounds and looks absolutely horrifying. How could you paint that on a ceiling? I would just give up and paint wings and a halo as well. For real though, like, that is a spaceship of some sort, isn't it? I mean, I understand the times, maybe the science wasn't there, but this thing is straight out of a sci-fi novel.
Number 5, Pazuzu. Our first terrifying demon up on this list has made quite the career for himself in pop culture. He's picked up some small gigs here and there. He's serving as a sort of mascot of sorts for the real fake band Gorillaz, multiple cameos on Futurama, and won some acclaim for his star-studded role in The Exorcist, possessing Reagan and making us all afraid of pea soup. Although his real historical background is far more interesting than any of his pop culture appearances. Pazuzu has been around for a long time, first being recorded as a Babylonian demon wind god, who was always playing both sides, so he'd come out on top. He was a god of wind, and it was thought that the wind ravaging, storms, and locusts were all byproducts of Pazuzu's rage. But he was also thought to be a protector. He would protect the home, taking a particular liking to watching over pregnant women. He was an incredibly destructive force in nature, and when it would come time to throw down, Pazuzu would fly across the world, breaking the wings of other demons to prevent them from getting into any trouble. Sort of like a demonic Batman. His portrayal in The Exorcist is probably where most people know him from and assume those things about him, where he's seen as a much more plain Jane possessing demon, lacking his impressive wings and other traits, and not doing a whole lot of flying around or anything with the wind, focusing a lot more on projectile vomiting and harassing a couple of priests. The real Pazuzu is a lot cooler than his Exorcist appearance, but no doubt more people know about that than they do an ancient Babylonian wind god. I don't think I'd like to spend much time with either incarnation face to face, and those priests definitely didn't want to either.
Number 4, Cherubim. These cute flying baby angels we see on soap ads and bottles are a lot scarier and much more sinister than the blonde cupids we're used to seeing. The cherubs, or cherubim, are God's throne bearers and appear over 90 times in the Bible. The Hebrew text says cherubim is a celestial winged being who represents God's spirit on earth and symbolizes the worship of God. In Ezekiel, cherubim are described as angelic creatures with 2 sets of wings and 4 faces: lion, ox, human, and eagle. Okay, this is getting scarier and scarier. The 4 faces of the cherubim apparently represent the 4 domains of God's rule. The lion represents wild animals, man represents humanity, ox represents domestic animals, and the eagle represents birds. Aren't those all wild animals? I don't know. The cherubim appear in several texts of the Bible, including Genesis, Ezekiel, Kings, and Revelation. Yeah, so lots of people were seeing these things, and they all kind of sound somewhat the same. They all oddly say 4 faces. Like every which way they turned, they could see a face. Some say, quote, they move quickly, using a wheel within a wheel, and their wings cover their body. Question, what's with all the wheels? People just like looking up into the sky all day must have had like severe floaters in their eyes, because a wheel and a cute baby angel thing look completely different, no? A conjoined wingspan of the 4 cherubim are described as forming a divine chariot, the so-called mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. 2 cherubim make the ark and form a space through which Yahweh would appear in Ezekiel's visions. The status of the cherubim are a sort of vehicle for Yahweh in the book of Samuel. So in a sense, they're kind of God's messengers, you know, bringing things up and down from him and to him, including him. Gotcha. A vehicle. Yeah, a vehicle. These images are terrifying. Yeah, and that's a mothership right there. That's a mothership. Okay?
Number 3, the Legion. Now, this next demon is a tiny bit of a cheat because although it's supposed to be a top 5 list, I'm about to make it a top 500,000 list. This next demon is known as the Legion, for it is many. The Legion's first documented recording is from the Gospel of Mark, where Jesus Christ encountered a man possessed by a demon. When he spoke to the man in an effort to exorcise him, he asked for the name of the demon inside him, and the man responded, Legion, for there were many devils inside him. Upon being exorcised from the man, the Legion asked if it could instead be transferred to a herd of pigs, which he then obliged. Now the Legion is pretty atypical when it comes to demons. It's not the prince of anything, it's not the manifestation of any one sin, and it's not any one thing at all. The Legion is made of countless demons that all function together in unison like a hive mind. When one has a thought, the rest of the Legion obeys. When one member of the Legion speaks, the rest of them speak all at once. Now, sometimes the armies of Satan are referred to as the legions of hell, but I guess the Legion is a separate thing altogether. It must make filling out forms very difficult. No one's really sure what sort of demons the Legion are or what they look like even. It's just agreed that there's a lot of them all working together on their common goals. Like I said, no one really knows what they look like, but if you've ever seen a horde of, anything all in one place, you can't imagine that it would be anything pleasant. Now, the Legion isn't as much of a pop culture starlet as some of the other demons I've mentioned on this list, but that doesn't mean that it's influenced things in pop culture. The phrase Legion for we are many appears in all sorts of different things, probably because it's just a very cool way to describe yourself. A recurring boss fight in the Castlevania video games called Legion appears as a writhing mass of bodies, no doubt inspired by the story. And the character in Mass Effect named Legion is an AI life form comprised of thousands of individual AI working in tandem, who directly references the story, introducing itself, saying, "We are Legion, for we are many." And while I'm on it, Legion was the entire best character in Mass Effect, but that's neither here nor there. Sleep easy, big guy. Number 2, Beelzebub. Now we're getting into the big hitters. Beelzebub is thought to be one of the first angels to have ever fallen to hell, alongside Leviathan and Lucifer himself. He and Lucifer actually have a bit of an identity crisis, as the two are sometimes thought to be interchangeable. They must have similar haircuts. Some demonologists argue that Beelzebub is another name for Lucifer, and some others pose that he's one of his most trusted lieutenants. But whatever Beelzebub is, everyone can agree that he's pretty horrifying. His history is fairly interesting. It's thought that his namesake is a mockery of the god Baal, an ancient Bronze Age god of fertility. Some scholars believe that Beelzebub's name comes from Baalzebub, translating to Lord of the Flies, inferring that the followers of Baal are nothing more than flies worshipping a dung god. They didn't get the memo that Balfagor was the dung god. The Lord of the Flies sort of ended up becoming Beelzebub's title, with almost all depictions of the demon featuring flies in ubiquitous amounts around him. Occasionally, he's even depicted as a giant fly. It's very Kafkaesque. Beelzebub is said to be one of the most powerful demons inside of Hell's domain, capable of great control over humanity, able to tempt them. Beelzebub was cited during the Salem witch trials as the entity that had corrupted and swayed so many women to witchery. Now, there's some discrepancy as to what sin Beelzebub is thought to preside over, with some offerings saying that he represents pride, some others saying that he represents gluttony, which I would say probably seems a little more fitting for a fly demon anyway, and he's most commonly associated with gluttony. Number 1, Asmodeus. Yeah, it probably would have made a lot of sense to have Lucifer as the number 1 spot on this list. I mean, he's the king of hell and all that. So let's just take this moment, give him an honorable mention, and say he's at the number 0 spot, just because I thought it was a little obvious, and I'm pretty sure you know who Satan is, and there's other demons we could talk about, bring up some unknown ones. So filling in at the number 1 spot is Asmodeus, one of the princes of hell and the embodiment of the cardinal sin of lust. Asmodeus fell from heaven alongside the other fallen angels, reforming as a prince of hell. Asmodeus is said to have been married to Lilith, the primordial she-demon, famed for her banishing from the Garden of Eden and famed for destroying Frasier Crane. Lilith was cursed and banished for her defilement and depicted as a temptress, and Asmodeus saw all that and was like, "Hey girl, I'm into all that stuff. You want to procreate an endless stream of demons into the world and reign over a dominion of chaos?" And the rest is wedded bliss. Depictions of Asmodeus vary pretty wildly from case to case. Occasionally, he's drawn as a handsome young fella, but most commonly he's depicted as a squat, vaguely humanoid creature with a rooster leg, the tail of a snake, 3 heads, comprising of a bull, a goat, and a scruffy demon head as the center. Asmodeus presides over lust with the help of his beloved Lilith, and the two tempt humans with madness and desire to ruin people with lechery. Somehow this wasn't enough for Asmodeus though, as some stories also describe Asmodeus as having command over the betting halls of hell and is responsible for tempting man's souls towards gambling. So what I am hearing from this is that Asmodeus probably parties harder than any demon out there.